Hi everyone, it's Jennifer, and today I'm going to show you some Lino print tricks, and this one is going to be how to trace from your iPad and doing a block transfer. So here's my image from our last session, and it's that funky little eggplant that I drew in Procreate. So now we need to take it from Procreate and make a tracing of it on tracing paper and then transfer that onto our actual block. So to get the iPad so that way it doesn't move, we need to do something that's called guided access. So first we want to go into settings and then accessibility, and from accessibility we're going to scroll down and turn on the guided access. And then once you get to guided access, you'll see the accessibility screen where it says passcode settings. So you're going to want to click that and then create your own passcode, and be sure to make it really simple. It does not have to be the same as your main security code, so just something that you're going to be able to remember. And in order to use this, now it's going to need to be activated. So we put our passcode in, and now we just need to press the home button 3 times to activate it. But before we do that, we need to go to the actual screen that we're going to be tracing from. So to do that, you would go into your Procreate document, you would size up your image exactly the size that you need it to be. That way it matches your tracing paper, it matches your block, so you'll have to adjust it as needed. And then you're going to go ahead and just turn on your guided access by pressing the home button 3 times, and that way it shouldn't move. So that's guided access. I will give you kind of more in detail description below. So let's go ahead and get tracing. So now that we have guided access turned on, I went ahead and just took my piece of tracing paper and made sure it was the exact same size as my actual linoleum block, and I used a really kind of low tact painter's tape just to adhere it onto the actual iPad. I think I put one on the top and the bottom. And I'm just using the tracing paper, and the iPad's on full brightness, so that way I can just put the tracing paper on top, and then I can use a dark pencil, one that's not too hard. I believe I have an 8B for mine. And I'm just going to go ahead and trace any of the pertinent information, so that way I am able to register and understand that once I transfer it, and just kind of get the overall gist of my design. So I'm just going to go ahead and trace those main key areas. Notice that I'm not coloring every section in, but that I'm just kind of giving myself the general idea and placement of said objects. So I'm going to go ahead and do a time lapse of this so you can kind of see what I'm up to. Now that I have everything almost all traced, I'm just going to get the finishing touches taken care of. I'm going to go ahead and place this tracing pencil side down on top of my linoleum piece. So you just want to make sure that you traced all the pertinent information and that you applied enough pencil pressure, and you're just going to line it up as best as you can onto your actual linoleum block, and making sure that it fits. The paper should have been trimmed prior to this just so it makes it easier for you. And when I tape mine, I actually like to tape it around the back side just so that way it has a little bit of extra hold. And if you wanted to, you could even tape it on the opposite sides as well, so there'd be 4 pieces of tape instead of 2. So now that we have our tape down, we can go ahead and start the transfer process. So the transfer process is very easy, and you'll essentially just need a blunt edge tool. I'm using a bone folder that's used a lot in bookmaking, but you could also use a marker end, like a permanent Sharpie marker's kind of rounded end. It's pretty firm and should transfer quite well. I've also seen people use like their fingernail or a spoon, like a metal spoon from their kitchen. So whatever's going to cause enough pressure, that way the soft pencil that you traced with will be able to transfer that image onto the actual block itself. So I'm just trying to get over any of the areas where I made an impression, where I made a mark, where I was tracing from the iPad, and especially things like the lettering, because those are really important details that I do not want to miss. And so you'll notice one thing, that my tracing is not 100% perfect. Remember, it's not exactly as the image is. It's rather an impression or an idea, and I can kind of fill in the blanks as I go once I start carving. So let's go ahead and finish transferring this, and we'll jump on to the next part. So it looks like my transfer turned out pretty good. I could have applied a little bit more pressure in some of the areas, but what you can't see on camera is actually very subtle in my view, so that's just one thing to keep in mind. But I could always put this back over and try to register it properly and apply some pressure, so that way all the pertinent information is there. And for me, that was just the top of the little eggplant there. So now that I have the information that I need, I can go ahead and take something like a permanent Sharpie marker and kind of darken in those areas, so that way there's no confusion on the areas that I will be carving and the areas that I will leave alone. So this is and could be an extra step for some people, but it's one that I definitely encourage, especially if you are new to this particular medium. Because it can be super helpful in kind of training your eye and getting used to where you should be carving, where your dark areas are at, and what details do you want to leave on your actual block. So a good thing to remember with linoleum block printing is that anywhere that you carve will be the color of the paper, and anywhere that you do not will be the color of the ink. So because this is going to be a traditional black and white print, the ink will be black, the paper will be white. I'm just kind of highlighting things as best as I can. And again, even though I'm a trained artist in this particular medium, it never kind of fails to have a discerning eye and to just make sure that you're getting everything where it needs to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill this in, and from there we're going to get carving in our next video, and I'll kind of talk about some of the ins and outs of that process as well. But I hope this was helpful, and be sure to check out the description where I talk about how you can turn on that guided access, in addition to some links to some of my other platforms that I'm teaching on, specifically Skillshare, where you can find some classes specifically on the relief printmaking medium. So thank you all for watching, and enjoy.